Before you took the test, before you told anyone, before you were even certain yourself, your pet already seemed to know. This is not coincidence, and it is not magic. The evidence is consistent, cross-cultural, cross-species, and supported by a growing body of biological research. Animals do respond to pregnancy in measurable, documentable ways. The question isn't whether it happens, the question is how. And that's where things get genuinely fascinating. The first and most powerful mechanism is hormonal. Human pregnancy triggers one of the most dramatic biochemical shifts the human body ever undergoes. Within days of conception, the body begins producing a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, known as HCG, which is the same compound that pregnancy tests detect. But HCG is only the beginning. Progesterone levels surge, estrogen climbs, relaxin enters the picture, cortisol patterns shift. The entire endocrine system begins operating on a fundamentally different schedule, producing a profile of compounds that is distinct, measurable, and, critically, detectable by the right sensory apparatus. Does your pet also act different when you are pregnant? Comment your experiences below. That apparatus, in dogs, is extraordinary. A human nose contains roughly 6 million olfactory receptors. A dog's nose contains somewhere between 125 million and 300 million, depending on the breed. But the raw receptor count only tells part of the story. The portion of a dog's brain dedicated to analyzing scent is, proportionally, about 40 times larger than the equivalent region in a human brain. Dogs can detect odors at concentrations as low as 1 part per trillion. To put that in terms you can hold, if you dissolved a single drop of a substance into enough water to fill 20 Olympic swimming pools, a dog could still smell it. What this means in practice is that a dog standing next to a woman in early pregnancy is receiving a biochemical broadcast that is, to their sensory system, impossible to ignore. The hormonal changes alter the way her skin smells, the way her breath smells, the way her sweat and her body heat interact with the air around her. To a dog, a pregnant woman does not just smell like herself. She smells like a version of herself that has been chemically transformed in ways that are specific, novel, and deeply interesting. Dogs are not just detecting a smell, they are detecting a change. And change is exactly what a dog's nose is trained, evolutionarily and neurologically, to notice. But scent is only one channel. Pregnancy changes more than chemistry. It changes physiology in ways that radiate outward, ways that animals pick up on through multiple sensory systems simultaneously. Body temperature increases in early pregnancy. The basal metabolic rate shifts. Blood volume expands by as much as 40 to 50% over the course of a pregnancy, which changes circulation patterns, skin warmth, and the subtle heat signature a body emits. Heart rate often increases. Breathing patterns change. Posture and gait begin shifting as early as the first trimester, long before any visible physical changes are obvious, because the body is already beginning to redistribute its center of gravity in anticipation of what's coming. Animals read all of this, not consciously, not through a process of reasoning or inference, but through the same ancient precognitive sensory attunement that has allowed prey animals to detect predators before they're visible, and that has allowed pack animals to assess the health and emotional state of every member of their group without a word being exchanged. A dog lying next to a pregnant woman is not thinking her progesterone levels have increased and her heart rate is elevated, therefore she is pregnant. A dog lying next to a pregnant woman is simply responding to a profile of sensory inputs that its nervous system recognizes, at a level far below thought, as significant and new. The behavior changes, the increased attentiveness, the protective positioning, the reluctance to leave her side, are the output of a perceptual system registering something important, even if the animal has no conceptual framework for what pregnancy is or means. This is a critical distinction. Animals don't understand pregnancy the way you understand it. They don't have a mental model of gestation or a conceptual map of what a fetus is. What they have is something in certain ways more powerful, a sensory system so finely calibrated to biological change that it picks up signals the pregnant woman herself may not yet be conscious of. The documented behavioral changes in animals around pregnant women fall into several consistent categories, and researchers across veterinary science, animal behavior, and biological anthropology have observed them independently enough that the pattern is hard to dismiss. The first and most common is proximity seeking. Dogs and cats that have no particular history of being clingy or attached begin following their owners from room to room, positioning themselves physically close and showing distress when separated. The animal is not behaving this way because it has decided to be protective. It is behaving this way because something in its sensory environment has changed, and the change is associated with the person it is bonded to. And proximity is the nervous system's response to unresolved novelty in someone important. The second category is behavioral gentleness. Animals that are normally boisterous, rough in play, or physically exuberant around their owners often become measurably calmer. Dogs stop jumping. Cats stop kneading with their claws. The animal adjusts its behavior in a way that is appropriate, though it has no cognitive access to why it is appropriate. What it has is something more like an intuition, a felt sense that the normal rules of engagement have shifted, encoded not in words or concepts, but in the changed sensory signature of the person in front of them. The third, and perhaps most striking category, is location-specific attention. Multiple accounts, far too many to dismiss as coincidence, describe dogs and cats not just staying close to their pregnant owners, but specifically orienting toward the abdomen, resting their head there, pressing their nose there, returning to that location specifically when given the choice of the whole body. There is a plausible biological reason for this. As pregnancy progresses, the fetus develops its own distinct scent profile. Amniotic fluid has a chemical composition that is detectably different from the surrounding maternal tissue. The fetus itself produces compounds that diffuse outward through the layers of the body. To a nose with 200 million olfactory receptors, the abdomen of a pregnant woman in her second trimester is not the same as her arm or her shoulder. It is a different and specific source of biological information. The animal is not mystically sensing a soul. The animal is smelling a thing it has never smelled before, and the thing is coming from a particular place. The sensitivity of canine olfaction to biological change has been rigorously demonstrated in contexts beyond pregnancy, and those demonstrations make the pregnancy detection phenomenon significantly easier to understand. Dogs have been formally trained to detect bladder cancer from urine samples with accuracy rates high enough to be clinically useful. They have been trained to detect lung cancer from breath samples before imaging would catch it. They have been trained to identify the specific scent signature of a malarial infection, distinguishing infected from uninfected individuals with accuracy comparable to standard diagnostic tests. In one landmark study conducted at the Medical Detection Dogs Organization in the United Kingdom, trained dogs demonstrated they could detect ovarian cancer from tissue samples, a cancer notoriously difficult to diagnose early through conventional means. What all of these examples share is the same underlying mechanism. Biological change produces chemical change, and chemical change produces a scent that, to a sufficiently sensitive nose, is distinct, recognizable, and classifiable. Pregnancy is a biological change. It follows exactly the same logic. The dog who starts following a woman around before she's taken a test is not exhibiting supernatural awareness. It is exhibiting exactly the kind of olfactory sensitivity that researchers have now documented in controlled laboratory conditions across dozens of studies. The remarkable thing is not that it happens. The remarkable thing is how long it took us to study it seriously. There is a second dimension to this that the purely chemical explanation doesn't fully capture. Animals are not only detecting the biochemical signature of pregnancy, they are also detecting the emotional and psychological state of the person they are bonded to. And that emotional state in early pregnancy is typically characterized by a great deal of internal turbulence, anxiety, anticipation, uncertainty, profound change, that expresses itself through the body in ways animals can read. Emotional states alter cortisol levels, which alter scent. They alter breathing patterns, voice quality, and micromuscular expressions. They alter the subtle postural and gestural cues that social animals like dogs have spent tens of thousands of years of coevolution with humans learning to read. A woman who has just discovered she is pregnant is carrying that knowledge in her body, whether she intends to or not. She is processing something enormous. And the animal she lives with can feel it, not metaphorically, but through actual sensory channels that are genuinely more sensitive than the ones available to the humans around her. This is why the stories are so often specifically about a dog or cat responding before the woman tells anyone. The animal is not responding to information anyone communicated. It is responding to information the body itself is broadcasting, involuntarily, through chemistry and physiology, and the thousand small behavioral shifts that accompany a major internal transition. The animal knows before you've said a word, because the announcement your body is making doesn't require words. Dogs and cats dominate the conversation, but they are not the only animals with documented sensitivity to human pregnancy. Horses show altered behavior around pregnant women, often displaying increased attentiveness and adjusted physical behavior during handling. Given that horses can smell water from significant distances and are capable of detecting subtle physiological changes in other horses from scent alone, this is perhaps not surprising, but it has been observed consistently enough to be notable. Dolphins, in the context of therapeutic programs where pregnant women have interacted with them, have been documented behaving differently toward pregnant participants, specifically demonstrating echolocation behavior directed at the abdomen. Dolphin echolocation, the biological sonar they use to navigate and hunt, is capable of resolving the internal anatomy of objects. There is a credible hypothesis, still speculative but grounded in plausible biology, that dolphins can detect a developing fetus through echolocation in the same way that an ultrasound machine does through technology. If true, they are not smelling the pregnancy. They are seeing it in a sensory modality humans have no analog for at all. Elephants, with their extraordinarily complex social structures and their demonstrated sensitivity to the biological states of other elephants, they can detect another elephant's stress hormones from a distance and respond communally, have been observed showing particular attentiveness to pregnant human caretakers in sanctuary settings. The pattern across species is not identical. Different animals are using different sensory channels, but the convergence on the same behavioral outcome, increased attentiveness, proximity seeking, orientation toward the pregnant person, across such diverse animals, using such diverse perceptual tools, suggests that pregnancy is broadcasting on many frequencies at once, and that the animals most sensitive to biological change are receiving those signals regardless of which modality they happen to specialize in. Here is something that the feel-good framing of this topic tends to leave out. Not all animal responses to pregnancy are positive. Some dogs become anxious around pregnant women. Some become territorial or show signs of stress. Some animals that are normally calm begin displaying what looks like agitation or confusion. And this too makes complete biological sense once you understand what is actually happening. The animal is detecting significant change in someone central to its world. Whether that change registers as something to move toward or something to be uncertain about depends on the individual animal's temperament, its history, its level of secure attachment to the owner, and how it has learned to process novelty. An anxious or insecurely attached dog, detecting a major biochemical shift in its owner, may not respond with protective closeness. It may respond with displacement behavior, restlessness, and heightened vigilance, because the sensory signal it's receiving says, something has changed significantly, and I don't know what it means, and uncertainty in someone I depend on is threatening. The same sensitivity that produces the heartwarming behavior in some animals produces the anxious, disrupted behavior in others. The perception is the same. The response depends on the nervous system doing the perceiving. This is worth understanding because it means that an animal reacting strangely to a pregnancy is not a bad omen, and it is not a sign of a problematic animal. It is a sign of an animal doing exactly what its biology built it to do, which is to detect significant biological change in the people and creatures it is bonded to, and to respond according to its individual emotional architecture. The sensitivity is not a gift that some animals have and others lack. The sensitivity is universal. What varies is what the animal does with it. Step back from the mechanics for a moment and look at what this actually means. You live with a creature whose entire relationship to reality is structured around different sensory priorities than yours. You are wired primarily for vision. The world you inhabit is a world of objects, faces, colors, and shapes. The world your dog inhabits is substantially a world of chemical information, a constant, shifting narrative written in scent about who has been where, what has happened, and what the biological state of every living thing in the environment currently is. In the normal day-to-day reality of living together, you are mostly not accessing each other's primary sensory channels. You are reading each other across a gap, interpreting behavioral cues, building models of the other's internal state through inference and pattern recognition. The dog reads your posture and your voice. You read the dog's tail and ears and the direction of its gaze. The communication is real, but it's happening through filtered and translated channels. Pregnancy is one of the moments when that gap briefly narrows from the animal's side. Your body is suddenly producing information that is legible to your animal's primary sensory system in a way that most of your internal experience is not. What the animal receives is not a filtered translation. It is a direct read. The biochemical reality of what is happening inside you becomes available to them as unmediated sensory information, the way that a face is available to you as unmediated visual information, not interpreted, just perceived. The animal's response to pregnancy, with all its gentleness and vigilance and inexplicable knowing, is in some ways the clearest window into what it is actually like to live inside that animal's sensory world. For a few weeks, you became something they could read directly, and they responded to what they read. If you have an animal that responded to your pregnancy, or a friend's, or someone you know, before any announcement was made, before any visible sign emerged, you were witnessing something real and biologically grounded, not mystical, not anthropomorphized, but genuinely remarkable. You were watching a perceptual system shaped across millions of years of evolution, refined by tens of thousands of years of living alongside humans, pick up a signal so subtle that the technology humans have built can only detect it in a laboratory. And you were watching a living creature respond to that signal, not with analysis or language or interpretation, but with something that looked, from the outside, unmistakably like care. That the animal does not understand pregnancy the way you do is not a diminishment. A dog does not need a conceptual framework for gestation to respond to the person it loves as though something important is happening. It does not need words for what it knows. It just needs a nose. And it turns out that a nose, in the right configuration, is enough to know something that the rest of the world has not yet been told. The body tells its story long before the mouth does, and the animals listening most closely are the ones who already knew how to hear it. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe to stay updated on every new story and discovery we bring to the channel.